I like it. You like it?
Like what?
The Shift Report with the Hood Mystic, where shift happens.
I love you.
Would you like anything else?
Straight.
Or a treat from the coffee shop?
Maybe. Just depends what they got. Peace. Damn. Nothing. Peace to the tribe. Peace to the collective, man. It's the Hood Mystic representing hoodmystic.com. White Rabbit Psychedelics. Colombian Exchange. We're here for another video. Today we're going to take part in the Seven Sacrament series every Sunday. We're going to look at the seven sacraments from a Gnostic approach. Don't know if it's going to be five sacraments or seven sacraments. Probably going to do seven just for issues and giggles. So what we're discussing is a sensitive, understudied topic when it comes to spiritual development, but one would say that it could be a real form of spiritual development. And the reason that I say that is because that the Christian church has a lot of power. Now, do I think that the Christian church is good? Not at all. Do I think that Jesus is a man? Not at all. But I do think that they have tapped into a particular energy source like water. So if a company owned the patent for water and everybody that drank water had to pay this company, that company would be very powerful. When you understand the primordial sacrament, if you understand the specific way to ritualize yourself, to access your soul, then you will have a lot of power too. So I'm not dealing with anything besides the metaphysics, and these conversations can be convoluted. That's why y'all need to come over to the Discord so we can have conversations about it. Because I'm only giving y'all the Cliff Notes version, even if it seems hella deep. Because I got way more notes, and I'm like, I can't communicate all of these notes. I have to make it concise. So in the editing field, they call it killing your babies, where is real stuff that I would like to talk about, but for the sake of time, for the sake of energy, don't want to overwhelm anybody and I don't want to confuse anybody. But what I want to do is break down all of these sacraments each week so you'll know what each sacrament means from a metaphysical level. The sacrament that we're going to be talking about today is baptism. Now, when you hear the word baptism, you're going to think about getting dunked into water. In Catholic churches, they sprinkle the water on your forehead. Uh, in some Protestant churches, they fully immerse you into water. But that's not a baptism, that's a baptism of water. So it took me reading over this hundreds of times to separate the two. Because what you're going to do is you're going to call a cotton swab a Q-tip. You're going to call toilet tissue toilet paper. You're going to call Proteolium jelly Vaseline. You're not going to separate one from the two. So when you hear baptism, you're going to think getting dunked into water. But that's just a misnomer. That's a 52 fake out. So we're referring to Gospel of Philip. This is going to be the meat and potatoes of what we're going to be covering, but we will jump around the text a little bit more. If you ever were to open up the Gospel of Philip, you would know that is no way that a person can do a video and cover it. It's too large, it's too many subjects, it break off into many other things. So what I'm doing with this particular slideshow is making it concise and focusing on baptism. Now, the hardest thing that you're ever going to do with this conversation is automatically attribute a baptism to being dunked in the water, but that is a baptism by water. And we'll get into this later, the differences of the variations of baptism, and then ultimately, what is a baptism? Okay. So the text that we're referring to is that the Lord did everything in a mystery. A baptism, which we'll be covering this week, a chrism, which we'll be covering next Sunday, and the Eucharist, which we'll be covering the following Sunday. And I know that God is real because I'm beginning this series today, this Sunday. And the third Sunday is going to be on the Eucharist, which is the day of communion, which will be the first Sunday in May. So that third Sunday, come prepared with your Lord's Supper. Hint, hint. And the redemption, we'll cover that. Bridal chamber, and we'll cover that. So we're going to go through all of these particular sacraments one by one from a metaphysical understanding, pulling out all of the religiosity, pulling out all of the mythology. Because when you get into the understanding of the metaphysical principle, you will understand why this is the first step to salvation, a baptism from a metaphysical lens. Okay? The Lord said, I came to make the things below like the things above, and the things outside like the inside. I came to unite them in that place. He revealed himself in this place through types and images. Very specific. And we want to trust the Gnostic script because this was the scripts that the church said, the Orthodox Church said, no, this is too real. Anything that was of any value in reference to metaphysical studies was thrown out. And anything that created a false narrative was kept. So I love the Bible. We talked about the Bible last Sunday, and we will talk about the Bible again, but not discussing the Gnostic scripts is like reading a book and tearing out a chapter and acting like you know what that book is talking about. Or taking out 100 chapters and you know what that book is talking about. The same way as a gospel in Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John, there is a gospel of Philip. Okay? So the Lord said, I came to make things below and like things above, and the things outside like the inside. I came to unite them. In that place, he revealed himself in this place through types and images. He revealed himself in this place through types and images. We'll talk about that later. Now, here you have a symbol that is deeply connected to baptism. But for the life of me, I'm just studying this stuff and I'm like, how do you have a baptism of metis or of fire? What is a baptism of fire? Because I'm thinking a baptism is when you dunk somebody in water, you immerse somebody in water. But see, that's a baptism of water. Baphomet is a baptism of fire. That's what Baphomet means. baptism of fire. It is the name given to certain symbolic figures. This is very important, half male and half female, carved in stone, which are said by some to have belonged to the insignia of the Knight Templars, which is very important when you talk about the financial system that we're under, which was created by the Knight Templars, which say unequivocally that they got all of their information from Baphomet. So the church goes all around trying to figure out who Baphomet is, but Baphomet was in the soldiers. Baphomet was the soul. Baphomet was the result of proper ritual. Baphomet means the baptism of fire, and it's right in front of your face. But if you're not able to separate being baptized with the word baptism, which is, they're not synonymous. They're two separate words. And I'll repeat it because in the space of building a strong knowledge base, you can't just say a whole bunch of stuff. The truth has to sink in. So, a baptism of water is not the same as a baptism of fire. However, they represent what a baptism is, but you don't need fire or water to deal with the definition of baptism. And it's much more important if you understand what a baptism is in and of itself without adding on water or adding on fire. Let me know if that makes sense. But when you do have a baptism of sorts, you are uniting something within yourself. You are redirecting your energy. In Hindu or Buddhist or Tibetan culture, there is a symbolism of Yab Yum, which refers to the depiction of a male deity in a sexual embrace with his female consort, symbolizing the union of wisdom and compassion. When you are looking at this particular image, this predates Baphomet, but this was the same image as Baphomet. It just included the woman in the symbolism. Because when you include the masculine and feminine principle in reference to this particular symbolism, and you understand what it means from a metaphysical level, where you unite your masculine and feminine energies from within yourself, and this is wisdom. The time that it took is the compassion that it takes for you to build yourself up. Because what you'll realize is that you have spent years and years of your life focusing this energy, this love energy, on someone else. But you can take this love energy and focus it on yourself at a spiritual level and get so much further. And so the reason that you see Baphomet and the reason that you'll see Yab Yum, Shiva Shakti, Jesus, Mary Magdalene, Isis, and Osiris goes out, he gets killed, gets chopped up into 14 pieces, and Isis goes and finds every single piece and puts them back together again. This is a metaphysical truth. When you unite your masculine and feminine, that is automatic healing. That is the truth. So when we are dealing with a baptism, we are redirecting our inward energy to garner a metaphysical truth. And that's why it is the first step to becoming a Christian, to activating Christ consciousness within the person. One must become baptized, but one must be baptized in water as a symbol, and one must be baptized in fire representing inner metaphysical truth in alignment to redirect your energy. So, as I stated earlier, baptism has a dual nature. So, we'll talk about the dual nature of baptism. Then we'll talk about the actuality, what baptism actually is. And this is a very important day because baptism is connected to the resurrection. And today is the day of resurrection. But the resurrection has nothing to do with a man in the sky. The resurrection has everything to do with you and I. That was a bar. And it just come to you. You know what I'm saying? Thank God. Baptism by water, baptism by fire. So, baptism by water is an immersion in the unconscious and emotional realm that cleanses and dissolves ourselves. So, when you get doused in water, that's just getting doused in water. What it's supposed to represent is the purging of your emotional life, because it is your emotions that make you feel a certain way over time. You don't like the job, you don't like the relationship, you don't like the situation. The emotions build up, they take over your life. All you thinking about is your situation. Everybody needs a baptism by water because it's going to purge your emotions. A baptism by fire, on the other hand, is a specific ritual that burns away what is unnecessary and what you no longer need. So one would have to understand, in order to redirect and change your life in a way, you need to baptize yourself. But we're just using words. This is not religious dogma. Baptism is the word. Same way if I'm saying, in order to go to your bedroom, you gotta walk. You're not saying, well, Hood, you being super religious right now. I don't want to hear none of that religious dogma. I don't gotta walk. I can scoot on my ass to my room. Thank you very much. Because that's what the person would say. I don't need to be baptized. Why are you talking about baptized? I don't need to be dipped in water, but you do need to cleanse your emotional field. You do need to burn away all of the mental, all of the all of the spiritual blockages that are going on within yourself. And so what you're doing is you're setting yourself up for ritual. You're banishing the energy. You're preparing yourself to redirect your energy on a day-to-day basis or on a monthly basis whenever you feel like you are ready to activate the Christ consciousness within you. You must baptize yourself. You must redirect your emotions. You must redirect your passions, because the way that you've been living, idolizing the job, idolizing the relationship, idolizing the status, that is not representing of Christ consciousness. Being in a fear consciousness, being in a worry consciousness, telling everybody, I suffer from ADHD. I got Tourette's. I'm autistic. I got all of these particular problems with me. When you're ready to like activate Christ consciousness, it might seem like, because without a baptism, you won't be able to direct your life. You'll continuously go in the direction that you don't want to go in. So if you do want to redirect your life, you'll understand the concept of having a formal and informal, ritualistic. Oh, I'm watching Sinners tonight. Got a long day, but I'm gonna watch Sinners tonight. So, what is a baptism? Baptism, at a metaphysical essence, is the act of internal reordering. Internal reordering. So when you look at the Christian that gets dunked into water, they know not of baptism, because there is a baptism of water, which is the outward symbolism, and there is a baptism of fire, which is the inward application. To be the best at anything, one must be the experiencer of it. You can never say, I'm the best basketball player, and you ain't never played basketball yet. You can never say, I'm the best at making love, and you ain't never made love. So, a baptism of fire is in reference to a soldier going to war for the first time. In the same way as having sex would be for the first time, you experience it and it changes you. When we're talking about consciousness and we're talking about awareness, you will not know anything about it if you worry, if you in fear, if you judging, if you pointing fingers, if you are ignorant of vidya, ignorant of the soul. Then once again, one needs to cleanse the mind and realign. See how them bars just come naturally? The immersing of the mind into new thought patterns that reflect truth rather than illusion. So, once again, we are talking about surrender and submission to your soul. One of the major things about baptism is the scrolling up and down the phone when you can be submitting to your soul. You on the toilet scrolling when you should be submitting. And a lot of this spiritual mumbo jumbo, for a lack of better words, have created buildings in your mind, points of resonation, algorithm shifts and changes into liking this person and liking that person and listening to this person for peace within yourself. So, what is a baptism? Baptism is a complete immersion into the soul. It is the letting go of the emotional and mental patterns that you have had up until this point. And anybody can do it at any time, but it is the ego. It is the ego that exists in such a way that refuses to let you surrender and submit to your higher self, to your soul. So the ego, and we're talking about the spiritual ego, we're talking about you in your most deepest, sincerest spiritual self, is looking for somebody else to save you. On this day of Easter Sunday, there are billions of people getting dressed, going to church, listen to somebody else tell them about God. And then when it comes to being baptized, you're not being baptized into your soul. You submitting into the God of that church, into tithing into that church. The reality is this: you must submit and immerse yourself into your soul. That is a baptism. It requires you to think completely different and to understand that it's going to be a journey. In the Hindu Vedic text, they talk about uh, compassion. That means that I'm going to suffer through the lack of knowledge to get knowledge, and I understand why I'm suffering because everything, the cross is a Hindu symbol of suffering. Because in Hindu mythology, everything is suffering. So when Christ carries the cross, that's just symbolic and metaphysical of living with the ego, having certain concepts of saying, I'm a Leo, so of course my ass stink a little bit. I can't help it. All Leos got a little stinking booty. Or I've come from a long line of booty shakers, so I'm going to shake my booty. I can't help it. I've come through a long line of twerkers, hood. My mama twerk, my grandmama twerk. Do you want to twerk? No, I don't want to twerk. I'm twerking in inappropriate places, hood. I'm twerking in the doctor's office. Baby Shark come on. I'm like, hey, doo 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 doo. I thought it said toot that ass in the air, hood. I don't know. I got a problem. You need a baptism. You need a cleansing and a realignment of your consciousness. A baptism at a metaphysical level is to change your internal narrative. It is only the ego that say, ain't nothing wrong with my internal narrative. My internal narrative is fine. Your ego don't want you to deal with your soul. So your ego would look at somebody, put somebody else on a pedestal, a preacher, a reverend, a spirit. All of these people survive. Like survive, make millions of dollars because human beings don't realize they soul. Exists because human beings do not want to get baptized into truth. They don't mind getting baptized into water. They don't mind joining a church. The church going to yap to you about God until you die. They're going to say, Sister Becky, she's in a hospital right now, suffering from cancer. Give her your prayers and condolences. Hallelujah. That nigga gonna preach that sermon every Sunday. You gonna live and die, and your soul gonna live and die. What a shame. What a shame people can talk about baptism for their whole entire life. Nigga said, I got baptized when I was 12, hood. I don't need to get baptized again into the faith. What I need to get baptized for? I done got baptized before. Why I need to get baptized again? I already got baptized. To change your internal narrative. Why do I need to change my internal narrative? My internal narrative is straight. Are you getting what you want to get out of life? Absolutely not. Then your thought patterns reflect illusion and not the truth. When your thought patterns are aligned with the truth, you know it the same way you on a ski and you the momentum is bringing you down. You're not confused. Am I actually going up the mountain or down the mountain? You're struggling. It's not working out. Do you know the only thing that's going to save you is making more money? The prices ain't going to get no lower. The rent not going to get no lower. The shit not going to get no goddamn easier. You got to get better. And how you going to get better if you got the same thought patterns, the same emotions that you had that brought you into this space? I thank God for this conversation because I didn't understand and understand what a baptism was until I did the knowledge. It made no never mind to me because I just see niggas getting dunked into water. What does that mean? But you could do your own knowledge. Like I said, Gospel of Philip is a massive text. All you will have to do is Google Gospel of Philip and you will get the text. Okay? And Control F5, type in baptism or baptize, and you will find baptism about 20 times in the actual text. So the baptism, according to the Gospel of Philip, these are just some quotes that I'm going to rattle off. Baptism is the holy building because there are three tiers in the realms of Kabbalistic and Gnostic thought. There is the Ein Sof Or, and the Ein Sof or something to that effect, but three forms of the formless that creates the life that we know. But the access to these higher dimensions is through the form of baptism. And one will say, well, what does that mean? One has to reorder the way that they think about things, understand that all of the divine things are inside of them, and the way to God is inside of yourself. Not not making this girl love you more, not getting a fucking promotion at the job, not getting a better apartment, not worrying if your kids see you as a poor dad or a rich dad or a rich mom that got your shit together. No. One must baptize themselves and reorder their internal dialogue in reference to their soul. I'm going to listen to my soul. If you don't get baptized into that, you're just going to listen to your original programming. One's in the chat if you're trying to talk to somebody and you giving them the real and they ain't changing. They not receiving the message. One's in the chat. One's in the chat, you telling them to stop doing drugs. They not stop doing the drugs. One's in the chat, you telling them to stop watching the porn. They not stop watching the porn. One's in the chat, you tell them they need to get their diet together. They not getting their diet together. One's in the chat, you tell them you need to stop smoking the fucking Newports. They not stop smoking the Newports. You keep telling them they not changing because they not getting baptized. They're not reordering their internal thoughts. And then you want the money, never getting the money. You want the girl, never getting the girl. You want the change, never getting the change. Because baptism, the changing and the reordering of your thoughts is an inside job. Baptism includes resurrection and redemption. Baptism includes rebirth. Baptism includes evolution. A caterpillar goes through a metamorphosis and either turns into a moth or a butterfly. We are being programmed to die. We are not being programmed to be immortal, even though they give us the scripture and they tell us that the scripture is going to tell us how to be immortal. But yet it's still Sister Betty Davis, she in the ICU. Let's send her prayers and well wishes. Why we must discuss the transformation in the alchemy of what the greats studied, because we see what the greats have produced. We see the vehicles. We see we're on laptops and phones. The alchemy is real. There is something within you that can move humanity forward. But that is in baptism. That includes reordering your internal dialogue into, because what is the programming? I'm afraid of dying. I don't want to die. I'm afraid of death, Hood. My mama just died, Hood. And I know you be saying that death ain't real, Hood, but I'm still sad about it. My daddy died. I'm still sad about it. I know you said you went through death and you talked to your ancestors like they here, but I ain't there, Hood. I know you said get an ancestor altar, but I just rather be sad about it. You need a baptism. You need to reorder the way you looking at this shit. Because you can continue to say your grandmama is dead, and she looking at you like, well, baby, I'm not actually dead. I'm just in a dimension where you can't see me, baby. But I'm not dead, baby. You gonna come over here too one day, baby. It's all good. You don't die. We immortal. If you start living your life as immortal, you will be resurrected. This day called Easter is for you. It's not for a beach blonde haired man. And you could be struggling mentally. You could be struggling physically. Your life could be on the brink of destruction. But when you begin to reorder and redirect your mind towards God, miracles happen. No corporation made me do this live. God made me do this live. When you are guided and directed, most people don't understand. Most people are not hearing what I'm saying, but they are hearing the unhealed part of their ego that doesn't want them to submit to their soul, to submit to the God within. So if this message is disturbing you, it is your soul that brought you here to listen to this message. I can never make you click on this video. Your soul possessed you to click on this video. Your soul is talking to you. Your soul don't want you to care so much about what you have been told about this life more than it wants to tell you about this life. It wants to tell you who you are. It wants to show you who you are. It wants you to live as if you are who you are. Great is the baptism because you enter the water and you live. When you redirect yourself from what you've already been doing, it's like I've tried it and it don't work. And thus I want to experience what it is to be me. This is the metaphysical truth that is hidden behind the religiosity dogma that blocks so much of us from getting to know self. So, what is the metaphysical baptism process? It is the observation of old patterns that have brought you to the results that you are living in now. The relationship, the job, the way that your children respond to you, whatever the case may be, these are old patterns. Now, one can say, I want a different relationship. One can say, I want a different job. One can say, I want a different way my children treat me. But if they do not observe their old patterns, guess what's going to happen? They're going to be at the same job. They're going to be with the same relationship. Their kids going to treat them the same way. You must fight. First of all, you need to see what is that way. What is the way? And it's a lot of times people are not an observant of the way that they are. Everybody dies, hood. Everybody dies. Well, that may be true, but I always knew that that is something that people tell themselves to cope. But there's deeper levels that you can travel into to understand the immortal self. Now, if we are going through the process of baptism of water and baptism of fire, you would have had to touch that part of your inner self to see the immortal side of yourself. If you haven't experienced that, you just might be just, thinking about war. You might be thinking about what it's going to look like when you've had enough meditation that your conscious mind have shut down and you fully awake and you be immersed into the fire, which is you, which is your soul, with your goddess floating around there speaking to you elevating you, giving you consciousness in reference to the future, because you are a psychic being, you know what's going to happen into the future. But when you talk about anxiety, when you talk about these negative things, this is just your ego blocking your soul. Oh, it's going to be so bad in the future. No, the fuck it's not. So, what is a baptism process? It is the surrender of the ego of the false self, that anxious, fearful, worried self that makes all the decisions. So, I'm going to just watch TV today. I'm not going to try to be my best self because my false self is saying that I got anxiety. And then I'm doing a dance like Will Smith and Doechii. Ain't it so cool to have anxiety, y'all? It's my anxiety. Rah! Let it go. The baptism process is a surrendering of the false self. Because once you recognize your old patterns, you don't know how to change them. The trying to change them is the bad part. Going on the diets, doing the Ozempic, doing the different workouts, doing all of these different, you on the internet, buying shit from the black market. You're trying too hard. Surrender when you let go, when you submit to your soul, when you immerse yourself into your inner being. That is the solution. When you fully submit to your inner self, your soul is so much powerful. Your soul is so psychic. It is all within you. You are the most spiritual person on the planet when it comes to you. You are the most smartest person on the planet when it comes to you. Immerse yourself into your inner being. Baptize yourself. You are an authority unto yourself. You giving another man an authority to baptize you, and so you can follow his God. And then you wonder why you don't like the church. Well, it's 40,000 fucking churches you could have been baptized into, sis. None of those churches is ordained by God. You know, the church or the temple that was ordained by God is you. You are the temple. God is within you. You have not been living your life this up to this point. So therefore, a baptism, a redirection of your internal dialogue in reference to your soul is the true rebirth. It's the true renewal. It's the true Easter. By perfecting the water of baptism, Jesus emptied it of death. By perfecting your emotional life, directing your emotional life to your soul, death no longer exists because the fears and worries and anxieties drive us to the graveyard. It is never the trusting and the knowing of our immortal self through ritual, through baptism, through ordered steps. If it took a house, the house that you live in was built through order steps. If your house wasn't built through order steps, you live it in a shack. You would not be paying rent to a house that wasn't built on order steps. So tell me why, when it comes to your religious life, you think that you're going to approach it randomly. I wonder what Bobby Hemming video is coming on today. I wonder what Brother Panic video I could watch while I work out, or while I'm drawing or coloring or some shit, or while I'm driving. Let me listen to this Brother Panic. Let me have this Brother Panic play on the background of my life. This Phil Valentine play in the background of my life while I'm just doing normal shit. That is not redirecting your inner thoughts. That shit is just playing on in the background. Now, it'd be one thing if you listen to it with notes, you take the notes and you apply the notes that you are taking, and you have become transformed through the message. But if you listen into the message and you the same person, the message didn't do shit to you. Because when the shit hits the fan and the real gets to real, you acting the same way. You doing the same things. You can throw in the ankh, you can throw in the dashiki, you can replace the letter I with the word EYE in all of your fucking sentences. But if you haven't perfected the emotions of your inner life, you are just fooling yourself. Because at the end of the day, you ain't fooling nobody now no more because the shit played out. You might as well go back to the hood aesthetic. It's much more relatable. Until you perfect the emotions of your inner life, when you have emptied your mind of the negative thoughts that are just simply associated with the ego, the part of you that may transition out the body, but the soul is always going to be immortal. At night, when the body goes to sleep, the soul continues on. It's called dreaming. It's called astral travel, out of body experiences. So by perfecting the waters of baptism, Jesus emptied it of death. What is death? Death is the separation from spirit. When we are connected to spirit, we are alive. Aren't you grateful for that? See, the egoic person can be so concerned with what's going on in the world versus what type of fucking apartment that a bitch live in. I just got a 3-bedroom, y'all. Is you alive? I'm alive in a studio apartment. I'm alive and I'm homeless. I'm alive and I'm living in my car. I'm alive and I'm living with my mama. I'm alive and I got a mansion. When you alive, you could be in any situation at any point in time, in any walk of life. Death is when you are connected or disconnected rather from the spirit. So it's a lot of people that's alive that's already dead because they are not grateful. They're not happy. They want more. They want a fucking Balenciaga bag. You the new Balenciaga bags drop, mom. I can't get it. So what is death? Death is a gradual pull. It is an emotion that is when your husband don't walk in the fucking room, your ass don't light up. You like, oh, here come this nigga. That's death. You arguing with your lover, that's death. That's not connected to spirit. That's not being grateful for life. You yelling at your kids all day, that's death. It's a gradual pull. It's a slow pull. You walking in, seeing your wife, oh, what's up, bitch? Here your ass go again. That's death. Baptism brings back your mind to center and it puts you back on the path. What it does is redirect you away from death and moves you closer to life, closer to spirit, closer to joy, closer to bliss. It is a gradual pull. Now, this is a 7-week series, so baptism is just the gateway, it is the bridge. Right? And the bridge is important. If I'm trying to get to point A to point B, there's no way I can get to point B without crossing the bridge. So what you're just simply doing with a baptism is reordering your internal sense. So in sidereal astrology, the first point of Aries is not fixed at March 21st. But it moves rather due to the precession, and it typically occurs around April 14th. This is April 20th, so officially the sun is in Aries, which this is why Easter is taking place during this particular time span. It wasn't happening during if Easter, which is the rebirth, right? Because we are in the space of sidereal. Sidereal, the etymology of sidereal is starlight. Those are our ancestors, okay? So sidereal astrology, which is based upon the astronomy, is just giving you a realistic viewpoint of how you look at this world today and just understand the cosmology of it all. And then also understanding the particular phases where things begin. So this week and this time, when the last astrology video I did, we talked about how the sun is entering into Aries, and now is a good time to begin and start new projects, new jobs, new careers, new just new energies, new beginnings. Right? This is the week, this is the time. This is a rebirth, and the time is just the image of a rebirth, right? Easter is the image of this, and we're just understanding the metaphysical principles so we can embody them in this present day in time, right? Because if they do not first receive the resurrection while they live, when they die, they will receive nothing. And this is for the people who think that this is about um it can be interpreted in many different ways. Like, so for a person who never gets saved, when they die, they will like, damn, I didn't get saved. Or it could be interpreted as you got saved once and then you never got saved again. I interpret it as you are constantly being resurrected as you live. Your life is a resurrection process. So once again, that idea of being rebirth is the gift that we are actually receiving. Now, one could say the goal of life is to have a Ferrari or to leave an inheritance to your kids. And with all of these particular things, you may have a Ferrari, you may have an inheritance, but what we all have, God is not going to give you a message that only applies to him or only applies to her. The God is the truth. God is the sun shining down. If I'm standing next to a mass murderer and the sun shines on me, it's going to shine on the mass murderer. The God ain't gonna say, I'm going to stop shining my sun on you, TK. So what I'm actually saying is everybody has a soul. If you don't realize that, you are in the process of reincarnation. So when you die, you will receive nothing. You'll come back here to do it again. Many people say, man, I hate it on earth. I hate it on earth. I hate being here. Right? But that's not the goal. The goal is to deal with your soul, understand its purpose. Because if you do hate it on earth, you'll be right back here to hate it again for a whole nother lifetime of ignorance, of vidya. So when we look at 99.9% of the population, they don't suffer because they don't have some new Balenciaga boots, Christian Louboutins. That's not why they suffer, because they don't got the latest iPhone, because they don't have a mansion. They suffer because they do not know their soul. Okay. So that has been the Sunday sermon, right? Wanted to, like I said, it's a lot of notes, a lot of things that we could talk about in reference to the subject, but I would hope that we would do it on the Discord. So be sure to join the Discord. If this message helped you or assisted you in any way, please pass around the collection plate. If you can spare $2, a dollar, hit me up at Hood Mystic 38 via Cash App. It's all into good service. If you listen to this, you know I just didn't come on here and start yapping about a whole bunch of things that I didn't take time and energy to decode and uncover and make it digestible and understandable for the human population who may be suffering through avidya, who may be suffering from samsara or kama, which is just mental trauma, um, desire, all of these particular things. But you know, let us rejoice in the resurrection. Let us be baptized by the fire of experience of our soul. And let us be elevated not through earthly rewards, but through a sincere inner spiritual practice. So, this is the first week of our 7-week series through the sacraments through a Gnostic lens. This week we cover baptism. Next week we will cover the chrism. So, with all of that being said, peace to the tribe, peace to the collective. I will see you all on the flip side. This is the Shift Report. I am your host, the Hood Mystic, and this is where shift happens.
The Shift Report with the Hood Mystic, where shift happens.